Okay, the interconnection especially between business and governance. And if you thought that I was getting a bit political before, just wait till this section. All right, it is hard to separate business from society. And when you look at the news, this is the business news, you will see things like US markets open lower after inflation jumps. Inflation, which is a country level thing and a governance level thing, affects all businesses. Investors focus on strong earnings despite Iran war worries. Samsung strike on hold as workers push for AI bonus. Elon Musk's X fined for not complying with Australia's child protection laws, etc., etc. The fight against foreign developers buying Caribbean beaches. So all of these things that they're about governance and who gets to make decisions, but they're also about business. That's the point. So Thomas Mark argues in the Cosmopolitical Corporation that businesses are actors in global governance. Whether they should be or not is a separate question, but they are. They shape the future of society and the planet. And he argues that they should play a responsible role as citizens of the world because they can, because they are more powerful than governments in many situations. This is the Global Cooperation Barometer over time. So this is from the World Economic Forum, which tends to be business focused. And what it is, it goes from 2012 up to 2024. And what it's saying is that global cooperation affects businesses because uncertainty is a killer for businesses, and just having a stable and cooperative environment to work in is good for businesses. So the global cooperation when it comes to climate and natural capital has improved according to business leaders. Same with innovation and technology, trade and capital. But overall, it has gone down. And one of the things that has gone down is health and wellness. But peace is the one that's gone down the most. So all the wars since 2012 have driven down the global cooperation, which has driven down the goodness of the business environment globally. My tip here, always consider who wrote and published your source. So I know that this is the World Economic Forum. I know the slant here, the perspective is all about business, and they're going to have asked business leaders, not climate scientists, for example. And here's the annual results from their members. Has it got less cooperative or more cooperative? Same. And that's the executives. And here's something that's happening in the world right now, and especially around the Iran war, that the idea of space technology, AI technology, the law not being able to keep up with what companies or corporations and militaries can do and will do and do. International law in particular. So they explain here about modern warfare and blurring of the legal boundary between civilian and military targets. The Red Cross has a say. Space-based technology is not just used for observing the conflict. It's used to to do everything from targeting to spoofing false GPS signals and all sorts of things. So the combination of advanced battlefield tactics. None of these are in the Geneva Convention because they weren't invented. It's a challenge to international law, and international law is falling far behind, as we saw when everyone's saying this is against international law, and everyone's saying, yes, we know, but it's happening anyway. So here we've got the question of, is it government keeping companies ethical, or is it companies keeping governments ethical? And I don't know if you remember, there was a big hoo-ha between Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Amadei of Anthropic, and Amadei of Anthropic saying, well, we're not going to give you our AI technology if you're going to use it to bomb without any human in the loop, or if you use it to spy on Americans. As you can see, Amadei and Sam Altman don't like each other very much, and Sam Altman quickly stepped in and said, well, if they won't, we will. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen. We need everyone to be ethical. We don't want, we need everyone to be ethical. Here is one of the least ethical people in the world, in my opinion. I do greatly apologize if you're a fan of Donald Trump. You're not going to like this unit. He's made so much money illegally and legally during his presidency. And before he came along, presidents would not conduct business at all while they were president. They put all their money into trust, so like a blind trust, so it was managed by somebody else. And but Trump has made money from cryptocurrency, from his family's crypto companies that they started, using the laws that he signed, written by the crypto industry. He's made money from his meme coins. He's made millions of dollars suing media companies for saying nasty things about him. He's made millions in income from licensing the Trump name in properties overseas. There is two that I know of where they said, no, we don't. The people said, no, we don't want them. One was in Albania recently, the Flamingo Revolution, and one was in the Gold Coast, and other investors. And this is a fascinating conversation article. Conversation articles are great. They're short reads, can be totally trusted. And this one shows how Trump has manipulated the oil market and has used the war in Iran to make money for him and his family and other friends and insiders, I guess. So it's basically what he's doing is insider trading on oil prices. Instead of the oil price falling after he tweets, these people found a pattern of it falling a few minutes before he tweets, and then or rising or whatever. So this massive one here was when he said that a whole civilization will die tonight, and that's what happened to the oil price. And people knew before he tweeted it, whatever it is Truth Social does, before it went out, they knew it was coming out, and they either offloaded or bought shares. And the article is an interactive, and it goes through and it shows you the patterns that you can see. And later that day, he put out on social media that he was in talks with Iran, and Iran basically said, what talks? What are you talking about? But I didn't think anything of it except to think he's like a little bit demented. But when you saw what happened to the oil price when he did that, it explains it. So they would short it in the morning and buy it back. Sell it before it went down and then buy it back at the low price and then sell it at the high price. It's corruption, but it's when business and governance work together to benefit a few people that it's not good. When business and government work together to provide a service to people, that's a different story. Here's another example, the tax reform that came out in the federal government where they got rid of the capital gains tax and the negative gearing. That was absolutely, they were absolutely slaughtered in the press over that. And part of the reason is that the people who own the newspapers that were doing the slaughtering, like the Australian and I don't know what the other ones are, but any of all the News Corp newspapers, news.com also, and 24 News or something, or News 24, all don't read. So that company, News Corp, not only owns all those newspapers, but its biggest source of income is property selling and buying. So they own realestate.com as well. So that's where they actually make more money than they do in their media empire. So they've used their media power to attack this this policy, because even the policy aims to get investors out of the market so families can buy houses. But if investors leave the market, the amount of turnover of housing, of selling and buying, is going to go way down, and that would take away money from News Corp. It's a complicated web. Okay, another actor, sometimes called the third sector after government and business, is the non-profit sector. And they also are actors in serving society or influencing society. So you might have UNICEF, for example, which looks after children, and you might also have the Cato think tank that are just basically owned by the Koch brothers and promotes fossil fuels and retro, very right-wing social policies. So non-profits aren't automatically good or bad, but yet the NRA is another one. The National Rifle Association is a non-profit. They have their own agenda, their own goals. Now, state capture is where I see that Australia is drifting away from being a liberal democracy, because quietly the state's decisions are being captured by business. So what is state capture? State capture, as defined by the World Bank, it's the exercise of power by private actors through control over resources, threats of violence, or other forms of influence, coercion, for example, to shape policies or implementation in service of their own narrow interests. And some of the things that they do is they have financial intervention in politics. So they donate to political parties. For example, $5 million from the gambling lobby to the Labor Party, which is why we can't get gambling ads banned. What else? Lobbying and personal influence. Big industries, all the lobbying leads to influence over policies and regulations and laws. And David Pocock, who is the senator from ACT, is very big on increasing the transparency of who is allowed in Government House and who has access to politicians on a daily basis, because at the moment nobody tracks anything, and you can have meetings with gambling companies and whatever else you like, Dina Reinhardt, and nobody knows. The third thing is this revolving door personnel exchange. People who have been in the public sector move into the private sector and take they use their past networks, their knowledge of how the institutions work, and personal access to people in the highest levels of government, and they exercise influence over policy making. Institutional repurposing is when you can hollow out and repurpose institutions that's supposed to serve the public good, but incrementally, by putting the wrong people as board chairs or on the board, they can subvert the purpose of the institution that's meant to serve. And that might be things like the Fair Work Commission or even the ABC television. Research and policy making. So major industries have virtually unlimited resources to engage in research and policy processes, unlike most nonprofits or individual citizens. So they generate submissions to Parliament all the time and legislative amendments, and they often write whole bills for the government. They often have bigger budgets than the politicians themselves to do research and write bills. And they also have resources for public influence campaigns like media, social media, disinformation, dark PR, to purchase a social license through investment in, like, for example, advertising on the backs of sporting heroes. And we've recently got rid of gambling ads on football players, which is one step forward, I guess. This is a explicit explicit ad about state capture. It's actually quite a good one. Another way that state capture occurs is they use undue influence to promote their own interests at the expense of public interest, and they often will turn the machinery of government into a tool, especially the police, into a tool to harass, intimidate, punish, and silence their most vocal and effective opponents. So climate activists, for example. There you go, just said that. Okay, they also have power over government. So most of the fossil fuel giants are multinational companies, a lot of American, but also European companies, and they can go to the International Court of Justice. And there are a lot of very strong laws around contracts. And they can basically, big oil companies can sue countries and demand exorbitant amounts of money if they're prohibited from digging up fossil fuels. So we might want to phase out fossil fuels, but they might have a contract that goes for the next 50 or 100 years, and if we don't let them do it, they can sue the Australian government. So this is a big problem. Underneath my face is the number of cases that have been initiated, but it is a lot. There was also a really big case of a big water company, I think it was Suez, suing Argentina, I think, for not letting them carry on making a mess of their water supply. Okay, so what else happens when governments keep not doing things and not fixing problems is that companies will just step in, and this is happening more and more, and just step forward, like is happening with AI, but it's also happening with geoengineering. I won't talk about it now, but we'll come back to it later in the course. So basically, a lack of governance, a lack of laws, a lack of boundaries, a lack of guidelines has opened the door for private actors to basically do whatever they think is best or whatever will make them the most money. So think about it. Actors can directly affect the actions of other social actors, but they can also systematically affect governance, which is what this section was about. Which do you think is more powerful? And we'll talk more about that next week when we talk about power.